The bullet tore through the night like a promise kept too late, slamming into my shoulder just as Archer's hand found mine in the shadows of the bridge. "Lucas, don't you dare leave me here," he gasped, his voice cracking over the wail of sirens closing in, blood pooling between us on the rain-slicked steel. In that frozen heartbeat, with the Chicago River churning black below and the city's corrupt heart exploding in gunfire above, I realized the boy they'd called a fool for dreaming in badges was the only one left standing between oblivion and dawn. I was 8 when it started, that gnawing ache for justice in a world that laughed at boys like me. Growing up in the shadow of the Gold Coast mansions, where my parents hosted cocktail parties for aldermen and real estate tycoons, our brownstone on Astor Street felt like a fortress against the grit just a mile west. Dad was a partner at a loop law firm, all crisp suits and backroom deals. Mom ran a boutique gallery peddling abstract nudes to the elite. They called it Making It in America, the American dream, gift-wrapped in privilege. But from my bedroom window, I watched the red and blue strobes dance over Cabrini Green's crumbling towers, heard the pop-pop of stray shots that made the crystal chandeliers tremble. "I want to be a cop," I announced one Thanksgiving, fork midway to my mouth, eyes fixed on the parade of squad cars blurring past on Lake Shore Drive. Dad snorted into his bourbon, Mom's laugh tinkling like shattered ice. "Lucas, darling, that's for the help, not for boys with futures." They didn't know then, or maybe they did, that the help included me, the kid already stealing glances at the rough-edged delivery boy who fixed our garbage disposal, his calloused hands brushing mine a second too long. By high school at Latin School of Chicago, the mockery had calcified into something sharper. I was the gay kid before I even had the words for it. Effeminate whispers in the locker room, notes stuffed in my backpack calling me badge boy faggot. But it was home that cut deepest. Dad's firm represented developers bulldozing public housing for luxury condos, turning neighborhoods into no-man's lands of chain link and cranes. "The city's fine," he'd boom over dinner, waving off headlines about rising gangs in Englewood. "People like us fix it with money, not guns." Mom would chime in, her voice syrupy. "Why chase shadows when you could curate light?" I buried myself in detective novels, Chandler, Hammett, dreaming of capes and shadows in a city that swallowed its own. And then there was Archer. He transferred in junior year from a public school in Pilsen, all lean muscle and quiet fire, with eyes like the slate roofs after a storm. We met in debate club, arguing over whether Batman was a hero or a vigilante. "Cops are the real caped crusaders," I said, heart pounding as our knees bumped under the table. He grinned, that lopsided smile cracking his guarded shell. "Only if they don't quit before the fight starts." We didn't kiss until prom, under the L tracks in Wicker Park, away from the tuxedoed farce at the Palmer House. His lips tasted like spearmint gum and rebellion, and in that moment, Chicago felt conquerable. College at DePaul was my escape hatch, but the pull of the badge was magnetic. Against their howls, Dad threatening to cut me off, Mom sobbing about ruining your life for some blue-collar fantasy. I enrolled in the police academy. "You're throwing away Yale for a suicide vest?" Dad roared in our kitchen, veins bulging like the Chicago River in flood. "The city's a lost cause, Lucas. Let it rot." I signed the papers anyway, the ink drying like a vow. Training was hell. Dawn runs along the lakefront, where the wind off Lake Michigan whipped salt into open wounds. Simulations in abandoned warehouses off Halstead. Screaming instructors drilling us on de-escalation, while real riots flickered on the news feeds. I came out to the squad on week 3 casual over lukewarm coffee in the locker room. Most nodded. A few clapped me on the back. "Long as you don't taste my ass for flirting," one joked. Archer showed up 2 months later, fresh from community college, his application greased by a scholarship for at-risk youth. He was assigned to my beat patrol in the 18th District, Rogers Park, where the borders blurred between immigrant enclaves and opioid shadows. Our first shift, we pulled a domestic on Morse Avenue. A father pinning his son against a radiator, the kid's face a map of bruises. Archer talked him down in flawless Spanish, his voice steady as Lake Michigan in summer. Later, in the cruiser, he turned to me, eyes searching. "You were right about the cape thing. Feels good, doesn't it?" I leaned over the console, our foreheads touching. "Feels like home." Love bloomed in the quiet hours, stolen dinners at and Sather's, cinnamon rolls cooling on the dash as we staked out corner dealers. Lazy Sundays in his tiny Albany Park apartment, tangled in sheets that smelled of his cedar cologne, whispering futures over the hum of the L train. Archer was my anchor, the one who saw the cracks in my armor without flinching. "Your folks are blind, Luce," he'd say, tracing the scar from a training mishap on my collarbone. "They ignore the city 'cause it's easier than fixing it. But you're the fix." We moved in together after a year, a walk-up in Edgewater with windows overlooking the lighthouse, our badges glinting on the dresser like twin stars. Promotions came quick. Me to detective, him to sergeant, chasing leads on the Marvia cartel's creeping grip on the south side. The city was festering, abandoned factories in Pullman turned fentanyl labs, kids in back of the yards recruited as mules before they could drive. My parents' world spun on, oblivious. Holiday cards arrived with photos from their Aspen chalet, captions gushing about progress. I stopped calling. The betrayal hit like a sucker punch from the shadows. It started with whispers in the precinct. Leaks to the press about botched raids, evidence vanishing from lockups. I traced it to internal affairs, poring over logs in the dim bullpen while Archer pulled overtime on a wiretap. Then, one gray dawn in March, my phone buzzed with an anonymous tip. Coordinates for a cartel meet in an old steel mill off the Calumet. "Go alone," the voice hissed, distorted. Heart slamming, I grabbed my piece and slipped out, leaving a note for Archer. "Warehouse run. Back by lunch." The mill loomed like a rusted skeleton under the Dan Ryan overpass, wind moaning through shattered panes. I crept in, flashlight cutting fog, the air thick with diesel and deceit. That's when I saw him, Archer, silhouetted against the glow of a laptop, handing a flash drive to a man in a tailored suit. Victor Reyes, the cartel's Chicago point man, a ghost we'd hunted for months. "It's clean," Archer murmured, voice flat as lake ice. "Your routes, your payoffs. Just like we agreed." Reyes smirked, clapping his shoulder. "Smart boy. Knew you'd see reason when the promotion dangled." My world tilted. Archer, my Archer, undercover? No, the flash drive glinted with real intel, not bait. Betrayal burned hotter than the muzzle flash I'd imagined. I lunged from the catwalk, gun raised, but Reyes's men were ghosts too, silencers whispering death. A shot grazed my thigh. Another clipped Archer's arm as he spun, eyes widening in horror. "Lucas!" "It's not." But the cartel goons swarmed, dragging him into the melee. Fists and boots rained down in the gloom, rebar clanging like funeral bells. I fought dirty, elbow to a throat, knee to a groin, until Reyes pressed his Beretta to Archer's temple. "Drop it, detective, or your boy's brains paint the slag heap." Archer's gaze locked on mine, pleading, broken. "I did it for us," he choked out. "The money. Your folks cut you off, the academy loans crushing us." Reyes promised a way out. I thought I could flip it, but it spiraled. Lies or truth? The man I loved, selling the city for a mortgage we couldn't afford. Rain hammered the tin roof as sirens wailed distant. Too late. I lowered my Glock, the weight of it heavier than the gold band we'd talked about in fevered whispers. But Reyes slipped, arrogance always the villain's vice. As he holstered, crowing about owning this shithole, Archer twisted, head butting him square. Chaos erupted. I dove for my gun, firing wild into the scrum, bullets ricocheting off girders like angry hornets. One goon crumpled, clutching his gut. Another fled into the storm. Reyes staggered up, firing blindly, the shot that hit my shoulder blooming fire. Archer tackled him, the two rolling into the shadows, grunts echoing like thunder. I staggered after, vision blurring red, and found them locked in a death grip. Archer's hands around Reyes's throat, the kingpin's knife flashing silver. "For Lucas," Archer snarled, squeezing until the light faded from those cold eyes. We collapsed together, breaths ragged, the mill groaning around us like a beast sated. Backup flooded in, tires screeching on wet gravel, tack lights piercing the haze. Paramedics swarmed, stitching us under the flicker of fluorescence, Archer's hand never leaving mine. The drive to Northwestern Memorial was a blur of morphine and monitors, his confession spilling out in fragments. The debt from his sister's chemo, the temptation of Reyes's easy score, the spiral into compromise. I hated every second, he whispered, tears carving tracks through the grime on his face. Thought I could protect you by keeping it secret. Biggest mistake of my life. Betrayal's sting lingered, but so did the love. The raw, foolish kind that survives gunpowder and lies. We fixed this, I murmured, squeezing back. Together. Word spread like wildfire through the department. The bust that cracked the cartel wide. Warehouses raided from Bronzeville to Little Village. Kingpins in cuffs by week's end. The mayor's office called it Operation Steel Dawn. Plastering our faces on the Trib's front page. My parents? They materialized at the hospital like penitents. Dad's tie askew. Mom's eyes puffy from a flight out of Miami. We were wrong, Dad said, voice gravelly, gripping the bed rail. About the city. About you. Mom just held me, sobbing apologies into my four-tangled arm. Turns out, their developer clients had been laundering cartel cash. The progress they championed was paved on blood. In the quiet aftermath, as Archer and I rehabbed side by side. Him in the next bed, our fingers laced across the privacy curtain. We rebuilt. No grand gestures, just the humanistic grind. Therapy sessions in a Logan Square walk-in, where we unpacked the weight of secrets. Community forums in the precinct basement, me speaking to wide-eyed cadets about dreams mocked but unbreakable. Years folded into a rhythm of patrols and sunrises over the lake. Our rings exchanged in a simple ceremony at Montrose Point. The city sprawling witness below. The scar on my shoulder aches on rainy nights. A reminder that heroes aren't born. They're forged in the fire of what breaks you. Chicago's still a beast, all teeth and pulse. But we walk its streets knowing we saved it once. Not with capes, but with the stubborn love that stares down betrayal and says, not today. And in the end, that's the American story. Flawed, fierce, and foolishly hopeful.